Well, thank you so much for coming to the screening of The Big Heat. This is part of our homage to Colombia's centennial. And I love the idea of starting with noirs because they were such a staple of the studio in the 40s and 50s. And we are fortunate enough to have few people introducing or Q&Aing some of these films. And tonight is my great pleasure to have Bette Gordon, filmmaker and professor. Betty's directed Variety, and here is Bette, and my introduction is going to cut short because she's right here. But she's going to, I couldn't imagine anyone better than her speaking about noir and introducing specifically The Big Heat. Thank you, Bette, for being here.
Hi, everybody. I am, as Giulia said, I'm a filmmaker, and I made a film called Variety. When I moved to New York, I was looking for film noir. I was looking for the underside of New York City, the part that I grew up watching on television late at night, maybe like some of you, the dark streets, the half-lit dark streets. It was so fascinating to me. I loved every aspect of it. It was mysterious. It was the unknown. And even more than those streets, dark lights and cobblestone streets, I was attracted to the female characters, the characters who had this sense of danger, this sense of unrestrained sexuality. And because of that, I was drawn to make a film that took the elements of film noir and turned it sort of around, upside down, so that in a way the hero of my film is the woman rather than the man, and she becomes sort of the investigator, and he becomes the enigmatic figure. So that's my film. But let's go back to the basic sort of film noir. It's a term that everybody knows, but I'm going to talk to you from my notes because there's a lot of thoughts I have in my head. So I might not be so organized, but let me just continue to talk. And at the end, I'm going to start off just talking about noir in general and women in film noir, and then talk about Fritz Lang a little bit, who's the director of this incredible film. So, I think that classic noir portrays a dark and violent world characterized by cynicism, fatalism, and a sense of moral ambiguity, something that I think for me plays in at least all my own work. The genre had much in common with German Expressionism, and 1940s noir created powerful roles for its female characters. Who were the women in film noir? I think you know. The Dark Lady, the Spider Woman, the evil seductress. She's as old as Eve. The opposite of the noir woman is the virgin, the innocent, the redeemer. These were the poles of female archetypes. Women defined by her sexuality. The Dark Lady has access to her sexuality, but the virgin does not. Men are not so delineated in their cultural and artistic portrayal, but women were defined in relation to men. And the centrality of sexuality and the definition of noir is key to understanding the position of women in culture. The primary crime the liberated woman was, and maybe today is, guilty of, is refusing to be defined. So film noir is one of the few periods of cinema in which women are active, not static symbols. They're intelligent and powerful, if destructively so, and they derive their power, not weakness, from their sexuality. So consequently, in the film you're going to watch tonight, you have one of the most incredible actresses, Gloria Graham, playing Debbie. Due to the socio and economic changes, I think you probably know this, during and after World War II, women joined the workforce. We saw the dismissal of long-established roles for women as mothers and wives, therefore breaking expectations in a dominant patriarchal society. So noir acts as an attack on their traditional views on marriage and domesticity by portraying non-conventional family relations. The institution of marriage is at odds with the desires of independence and sexual and economic freedom of the female heroines. Noir women reject domesticity, marriage, and motherhood, the most crucial symbols of traditional patriarchal values. Noir challenged the worldview, and it threw the conventional patriarchal system on its head. With women central to the framework of noir, they were no longer placed in submissive roles, but positioned as sexual subjects. film noir became a focus and a significant turning point for feminist film criticism, really in the 1970s. Gender roles were being examined at this time, and this led film theorists and scholars in the 1970s to start looking and exploring how women function in film and how the female form is used and what that represents, leading to an examination of gender identity and sexuality in relation to the representations of power, a study that still continues today, but really kind of anchored itself in the 1970s by looking first at film noir. We can look today at classical film heroines from the past, the strong woman of the 40s films, such as Katharine Hepburn and Rosalind Russell, whose strength was nonetheless expressed by their willingness to stand behind their men in the last reel. They were replaced by the sex goddess Marilyn Monroe, the virtuous wives like Jane Wyman, and the professional versions like Doris Day in the 1950s as the dominant cultural heroine. Oh my God. The subjects of film noir are generally the lawless underworld, the fringes of society, crimes of passion, greed. The dominant worldview expressed in noir is paranoid, claustrophobic, hopeless, doomed, predetermined by the past, and without clear moral or personal identity. Man has become uprooted from the values and beliefs that offer meaning and stability. And in the almost exclusively urban landscape of film noir, he is struggling for a foothold in the maze of right and wrong. Values are consistently shifting. Nothing, especially woman, is stable. Nothing is dependable. The visual style conveys this mood through the use of darkness, both real in underlit and nighttime scenes, and psychological through shadows, beautiful compositions which overwhelm the character in exterior and interior settings. The shifting, shadowy environments make it hard for the characters and the viewers to orient themselves. You can't quite see where you are. Silhouettes, shadows, mirrors, reflections indicate the lack of both unity and control. The sexual, dangerous woman's lives in the darkness. She is the psychological expression of man's own internal fear of sexuality and his need to control and repress it. Frequently, the female figure exists as a crucial element within the dangerous criminal world, which the hero struggles with in the course of his investigation, and she is central to the problem in unraveling the truth. Woman is often the object of the hero's investigation, the figure in the puzzle, which the hero has to solve. And in this relationship with the hero, the woman helps to determine the twists and turns of the plot. Two options were available to women in film noir. You can either work or live off men. We see working women in bars and nightclubs where sexuality and money are brought into explicit juxtaposition, a contradiction for bourgeois morality. And the female sexuality is supposed to be sanctified, really, in life by love that's given freely, which is hidden within the institutions of marriage and the family. The heroines often share the hard-boiled cynicism of the hero, which further undermines the conventional sexual ideology. Not only is the hero frequently not sure whether the woman is honest or a deceiver, but the heroine can be fractured so that it's not evident to the audience whether she fills the stereotype. Fritz Lang was one of cinema's greatest architects of evil. His Metropolis, 1927, was one of the best silent films, but it's the movie M, I don't know if you know it, made in 1931, with Peter Lorre as an eerie child murderer, unblinkingly evil. Fritz Lang, in his own life, fled Hitler to Hollywood, mostly making genre pictures, some masterpieces of film noir. The Big Heat is probably the greatest, according to most critics. There's a sense of ironic pessimism in his films, maybe undermining the apparent bravery of his heroes. Glenn Ford plays Banyan in your film you're going to see tonight, an ethical man, a good cop in a bad world. He defeats the bad politician. He's unbending, he's fearless, he's courageous. But underneath this, Fritz Lang questions the human cost of Banyan's ethical stand and what happens to others because of his ethics. The Big Heat feels like a police procedural until about halfway through, when it catches fire with the performances of one of my favorite actors ever, Lee Marvin and Gloria Graham. Gloria Graham is a legendary character in film. She was at one time she was married to Nick Ray. I know you're seeing In a Lonely Place if you come to that, or if it's already shown, and also a film that won an Oscar, The Bad and the Beautiful. Such great titles. The Big Heat is one of Lang's best films, as I said. It's deceptive. It has a kind of domestic tranquility on one side, separated from the violence of the world on the other. Banyan thinks he can draw a line between his family and the bad guys, but he invites evil in. Banyan's on a mission, oblivious to the cost. And he's right, of course, but ... You're going to see the film. Fritz Lang directs this film more in a classic Hollywood tradition, and it's more visceral than a lot of Hollywood films in one way or another, and that we see Lang's recurring cynical view of the world that is unforgiving. It's also an indictment of the American legal system, perhaps because he had to defend himself from the House of Un-American Activities Committee, HUAC. Big Heat was the first film he made after he was cleared. He always felt he should have stood up to HUAC, as he should have stood up to Hitler and the Nazis instead of fleeing. Dave Banyan, who does stand up to the criminals and the corrupt superiors, fascinates Lang. Banyan, a typical citizen swept up in a nightmare, more in sync with Lang. And Ford, as cinema's nice guy, nice man. So when Ford goes into a rage, you know there is probably no force that can stop him, because it's just this nice guy in a bad world. The opening shot is, and you're going to see this in a minute, I'm not going to give anything away. The opening shot is an object. It's a close-up of a gun in Tom Duncan's hands, taken out of the frame to be used by someone else. Great opening shot. Lang has an obsession with objects, especially objects of unique size and shape. Apparently, there's a painting of Fritz Lang's mother in Banyan's house, and Banyan's house has a very interesting shape, actually, unlike other houses. The film has an ambiguous ending. Beautiful, perfectly suits it. And on the surface, it looks like a happy ending, but it masks a darker story underneath. Ask yourselves, where do Fritz Lang's sympathies lie? With whom? Some of his other great classics, Fury, Manhunt, Scarlet Street. You're going to have such a treat. Film noir characters, female characters, brilliantly written, sometimes breaking stereotypes of women in American cinema and even in film noir. In this film, the women are two perfect examples of what I've been talking about. Banyan's wife, Kate, is shown to be different from the middle-class American wives. She is sexually aggressive, which is interesting because usually that's not the case. And Debbie, Gloria Graham, is sexualized, but, and I don't know that I've seen this that much, Lang makes her more of the hero, which is usually reserved for the men. So on that note, I hope you enjoy the film. It's a treat. I hope I didn't go on too long. I go into my professorly studies whenever I have to do anything. I have to think deeply. So have a great screening, and I hope there's a lot of you there. In my favorite cinema in the world is the Sag Harbor Cinema. Thanks.
Now you know why I wanted Betty to introduce this, because she's so special and she can make so much sense about what we're doing.
Have fun.